Great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our virtual career cafe. I'm Amy Good and from the Community Education Center for Elk-Cameron counties, and I'll be the moderator for today. And we're recording the session to make it available for other students at a later date. Today's session is to provide you an opportunity to gain more insight and exposure into careers in technology and to assist you in analyzing your own future career choices. So today's guests include Darryl, Koch, VP of Information Security Officer at CNB Bank, Nick Skok, Automation Program Manager at Gasbarre Automation Solutions, and Ian Crego, Desktop Support Technician at Inshore Technology Solutions. So thank you guys for joining us today. We'll start off with some introductions. So if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself, we'll start with Darryl.
Okay. Nice to meet everybody. I'm Darryl Koch, as Amy mentioned. Head of Information Security at CNB. CNB's, I think we wanted to talk a little bit about the size of our companies and what they do. So CNB Bank's kind of a regional bank. We cover central PA, such as Clearfield, DuBois, Ridgeway, St. Mary's, up through Bradford. And then we also do Erie Bank, kind of the whole Erie region, Ohio, and Buffalo, New York, and Virginia. So I cover security for the whole region.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about your career path too? Like, how you got into this type of career?
Sure. I started with honestly just kind of help desk work out of high school. Got into consulting, did that most of my life. I made the mistake of going to ITT right out of high school. I think ITT is now closed because they were a bucket shop, basically just a degree mill. I realized that about 6 months in and left. So college dropout initially, but for good reason. Went back several years later, got a couple degrees. I have a master's now in information security, a bachelor's in information security, and then like 20 certifications. So always learning, as Amy knows. And just kind of climbed up through the ranks, network security, network engineer, and then into banking.
A lot there, but I guess in IT you have to have a lot of certifications.
It definitely
Nick,
helps.
do you want to? Yeah, Nick, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself too?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the program manager at Gasbarre Automation Solutions. We design, build, and implement automated equipment for various industries like aerospace, automotive, powdered metal, etc. I run the program, but I'm also the lead robotics engineer. So I program most of the robots and set up those systems.
How did what's your career path look like?
Yeah. So again, like Darryl, mine wasn't, I guess, truly a straight out of college, and this is what it was. I had a kid at a younger age, took a break from college, but eventually I was still interested in technology and coding, and I eventually was at the right place at the right time, and just got into industrial automation, and then I completed my degree while working in electrical engineering.
I like these paths that aren't set straight out of high school. That's good. That's good for the kids to hear. And Ian, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Oh, you're muted.
I sure am. So I work for Inshore Technologies, which is a managed service provider. It's essentially, we provide IT services to an assortment of different companies. One of them being the Port Allegheny High School and Elementary School, which is typically where I work. Officially PC support technician. I'll focus on the normal aspects of that role. Inshore's role system is a little bit subtypical, so I do a lot of things that bleed into also system administrator. But in terms of how I got started, also a subtypical career path. I actually started out of high school, got a part-time job at GameStop. I worked there for a year and a half, ended up becoming a store manager. I did that for several years before I just kind of hit I can't go any further here. And I'd been doing IT stuff on the side at home for quite some time, and kind of learning my way through things, and eventually was able to get into Inshore Technologies, despite not having a degree, despite the fact that I didn't go to college, or haven't yet, I should say. That's always a possibility of something that I may go back to. Yeah, that's more or less how I got to where I am now.
So you all are in technology, but it all looks different. So if you can just tell us about, a typical day, what that looks like. I guess I'll start with you, Ian. What does your typical day look like? Who are you interacting with, and what kind of skills are you using?
So typical day to day could be one of two things really for me. Primarily, main option is that I'm working in the Port Allegheny school, and then I'm handling anything from a student whose Chromebook won't turn on, something as simple as that, to maybe I'm troubleshooting a more complex wireless issue of, the wireless isn't working in this particular corner of the building. And on my favorite days, there's a more interesting, back-end server issue. Alternatively, it could be as simple as, well, this printer doesn't print. Anybody in IT can tell you that printers are the bane of our existence. Every one of us will agree. But then there's the alternative of things like what I'm doing today. Given the closures, I'm working from home. The managed service provider that I work for, we run a remote call center so that we can provide support to our clients, especially today, who many of them aren't working in their offices, so that they can call in and we can remote into their computers and help them with whatever issues. Specifically, also could be a print issue, which is actually what I was just wrapping up before this meeting this morning, was getting somebody set up so that they could print their work documents on their home printer while they're at home today. Could be a number of other things in that call center as well, but more or less those two things.
How about you tell us about what your day might look like?
We cut off at the beginning, Amy. We didn't hear the name.
Oh, Nick. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, so a typical day starts off with project meetings, with our team of engineers to see what projects we have. We usually have 2 or 3 going on at the same time. And then after that, like right now I'm out in the field in our assembly building, helping technicians get some of our newer built systems up and running and start debugging the code. But today I'm working from home. My son had off, so today I'll actually be programming through simulation software. I'll be writing code and verifying through simulations for an upcoming project, and then some Zoom meetings.
So what percentage of your job do you think is communicating with others and, a lot of teamwork, or because it seems like sometimes technology is kind of like you're on a computer all day long, but I'm not sure that's, what your job entails all day long.
Sure. So, I mean, our whole organization centered on team. Each project involves a whole team of engineers and technicians. So, you design a project and you'll have electrical, mechanical, controls engineers all involved in the design and build. And then once it's released into manufacturing for them to, machine it, build it, assemble it, wire it, there's a lot of communication through different facets throughout the build process. So no man is an island. It's definitely a large team effort.
Then Darryl, how about you? What does your day look like?
Well, every day is an adventure. So I'm the head of information security, but I also oversee physical security and vendor management. So you get your boring days where you're sitting there reading, maybe a couple thousand pages of vendor documents to make sure they're secure enough to bring on board. Those are the days we don't like talking about because nobody wants to hear about them. But I oversee a team of about 13 people. So a lot of my work is working with people on the team on whatever project's going on. I spend a lot of time working with the board of execs, the senior management in the bank to say, here's strategic initiatives, here's what we're going to do going forward, and then being able to correlate that down to my team saying, how can we secure this? We've had things yesterday, for instance, I was in Bucyrus, Ohio. We have multiple sites out there, and I spend most of my day trying to break into the bank. I'm looking for locks that don't lock right. I'm looking for open network ports. I'm looking for various things that aren't properly secured so that we can go back and me and the team can secure them. So today I'll be writing up sit reps of what I found and, see who gets hand slapped and all that kind of work. So really there's a lot of correlation between, top-down management flowing through me to my team, a lot of interaction with the IT team. So one of the things we do different in banking is there's separation of duties. So we want IT to be separate from information security. That way IT can keep the lights on, but we can make sure they're doing it securely. So IT has about 30 people on their team. My team's around 13. Checks and balances, right? We make sure if they're installing something that gets installed properly. We don't leave default passwords. We don't do those kind of things. Some days may be dealing with auditors all day long. Banking's wonderful in the fact that we're audited all the time. I'm sure Nick can attest to that with like ISO certifications and things. Our audits are a little different. They're looking for feasibility, financial security, making sure we're protecting customer data. We're probably in audit 7-8 months of the year. So we're talking to auditors. They're additionally making sure we're doing things securely, making sure customer data is protected. So when I say every day is an adventure, you're trying to balance all that in my position. Maybe my team, I try to give them a little more structure in what they do. My team will be, here's your 1 or 2 major projects that you're leading, you're spearheading, but then, you're going to look at phishing emails, you're going to look at logs, you're going to look at antivirus alerts, kind of the whole gamut of things from an information security standpoint. So
do you all work from home or do you have offices or?
Yeah, so my information security team's entirely remote. We do have many members of the IT team work on site, but also work regionally in our different locations. But the wonderful thing, they're the ones that have to keep the lights on, so they're the ones we make touch everything. So we can sit back and say, hey, no, you gotta go fix this. Certain things like yesterday, it's obviously good to get on site, see it with our own eyes, make sure things are being done, but also, what I want to say, information security. Yeah, I would say IT is the same. I think Ian and Nick would probably agree that our jobs are sometimes thankless. Information security, especially because even from the IT side, all you do is make our jobs harder, right? That's not the case. We look at things like single sign-on to where you don't need 40 passwords. Well, information security at the bank is ones that installed those things and set them up and configured them, made sure they worked and worked securely. So I try to get out in front of that, work with our end users and train them on, security awareness, phishing emails, password security, all those kind of things. So I try to train our end users on that, but I also try to talk about the good our team does in the background that nobody knows about. So I think that's important, that communication with, our frontline, our tellers, but also getting that face out so they know who to contact if they see something.
Well, as far as like cybersecurity, let's say, is that like an in demand? Do you see that growing? That kind of career growing? Like, what's the future for that?
Yeah, so information security, oh my, probably 2012, 2013, the whole industry was saying information security has 1 million open jobs. I think currently we're at 3 million open jobs in information security. So it's constantly growing, especially the remote workforce, right? Yeah, I heard Ian mentioned, he's going to set up a printer for somebody that did work for remote. And I'm like, is that our printer? Is that their printer? Do they have a shredder? Like there's all kinds of document exfil there. What can we do to stop that? So every company is going through this with COVID and the new movements for work from home of we're going to be everywhere our borders, our information borders are no longer stopping at our routers and our firewalls in the company in these four walls. They're everywhere. You know, movement to cloud's doing the same with O365 or Salesforce or any of these huge solutions. So because of that, your teams have to differentiate, right? So constantly growing. You know, I think the fastest growing pieces right now are penetration testing, which is ethical hacking. You know, you'll come on board, try to hack a company for that company. That's a huge growing piece because every company is trying to get ahead of the hackers. The other piece that's really growing is honestly any kind of cloud security, cloud information or identity access management. They call it cloud IAM. So again, if you're looking at O365, Azure, Salesforce, all those fields are growing massively. If InfoSec is so broad, you know, there's, I always relate it to being a doctor. You know, if you're a doctor, well, what are you a doctor of? Are you a pediatrician? Are you a ear, nose, and throat doctor? You know, you can just say you're a doctor. Information security is the same because IT is the same. You know, well, are you a SQL guy? Are you a programmer? Are you, you know, do you do networking? Do you do Cisco switches? Are you a Juniper guy? You know, there's so many different pieces that it's constantly growing. Every company's trying to improve through technology, and the field won't slow down for years.
I found that out trying to organize this session because I wasn't sure like if like people were doing the same thing. So I know I kind of like reached out to Ian or to Nick, and I'm like, well, do you do the same as Ian? And he was like, no. So trying to like explain it all. So I do realize there's a lot of different areas that, you know, students with interest could go into. But do you start at the same in IT? Do you start like if a student wants to go into IT, do they need to know like, I guess if you're going in as a doctor, what you're going to specialize in, or do you just go in generally?
I guess, you know, what I tell my team, you know, we hire obviously specific roles that are, you know, maybe further up, more experienced, but I also hire a lot of juniors. You know, information security, there's 3 million open jobs, it's hard to hire. So one of the things I do is I'll bring in someone fresh out of college. I'll bring in someone fresh out of high school. I'll bring in somebody I see drive. You know, drive's a huge thing. Drive and team fit, they're my two biggest things. If you have drive and you'll fit with the team that we've built, you're going to fit and you're going to excel. So what I'll do is I'll bring them in and I'll say, okay, you're going to learn the basics, the things we see every day. You know, you're going to help look at phishing emails for the bank. You're going to help look at antivirus alerts. So I'll take somebody fresh out of school for that. But then what I do is, as you start doing the work, I'll give you different projects, or maybe not running it, but working with others on the team. And if you excel, you're like, oh, I love doing this. This is the part of information security I like the most. I'll start catering my projects that way for that person and say, you know, continue to grow, continue to learn it. Here's education, you know, whatever you need, here it is, learn how to do it, because I want my people to stay happy, right? I want them to be happy with what they're doing, because that's going to keep them at the bank. That's going to keep them on the team. It's going to keep them progressing. And that's the hardest part in our industry right now, is keeping people.
So you can get into this without the college degree?
For my teams, you can. I will say it's hard. You know, I think, you know, especially information security, right? And I'm probably a bit of an outlier in the industry. You know, a lot of information security people start in a SOC. You know, they're gonna sit there and look at antivirus and log alerts till their eyes bleed. It's horrible, and honestly causes burnout in the industry, and they stop InfoSec. They're like, that's horrible, I don't ever want to do that again. I try to go the other way. You know, I try to, you know, what's the term, give a kid a chance, that kind of thing. You know, it's, to me, hiring's it's a two-way street. So, you know, you're looking for that fit. You know, who's going to get along with the other people on the team. You know, I think anybody here's had the negative work experience in the past where you're like, oh man, I can't stand this person on the team. You know, this doesn't work for me. And what happens? You might be a high performer, but you're leaving because of that other person. So that's something I really emphasize when I'm hiring, that, you know, I don't necessarily, I want you to have a background, I want you to have experience, but if you have passion and you're going to fit with my team, I'm going to hire you over somebody with a bachelor's, just because, you know, the things you do at night. You know, what do you do at night? Do you do hack the box? Do you do try hack me? Are you doing something like that to continue your education?
I can completely understand about the fit within a department for sure. Ian or Nick, I know that we've talked somewhat, and you have in the past mentioned about the need for like people to maintain the systems that you guys are creating and building. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So our area, even in the U.S. and the world as a whole, robotics are growing exponentially. I mean, just in the month of December, we probably have 6 orders for 7 robots, which is a lot for just a month in our local area. You know, so if you look at some places in our area, like American Axle or Keystone, that have hundreds of robots, they need people to both maintain them and understand how to work with the systems. The robots are large mechanical systems, you know, that eventually do fail because anything mechanical will end up failing. But as well as, you know, there might be bugs in code, and you're going to need people to work on the robots to troubleshoot issues, sensors, stuff like that. And the robot industry is growing exponentially. So the more we put in our area, we're trying to do a training program with Penn State Du Bois so we can train local people, because we, as a systems integrator, don't want to become a system maintainer because we put so many robots out there, and people are going to need support. You know, it'd be nice if you could just put a system out there and it ran perfectly forever and nothing bad happened, but we don't live in that kind of world. So things do happen, things change. So yeah, there's definitely avenue for people to grow, not just as the engineering, but robotics technicians, controls technicians, that kind of stuff.
When we talk about robotics, because that is, you know, an interest for the younger generation, how would you recommend like starting to get into robotics? Is that an IT degree, or is it its own degree, or how does that work?
So there is no formal degree for robotics. There's a lot of different pieces to it. So there's mechanical, there's electrical, as well as software. The way I got into it is like playing with these development boards. You would write code and actuate some robots and stuff like that to eventually getting a real robot. A lot of schools have different programs. I'm a judge for Du Bois area. They have a robotics club. They're having a robotics competition. So I mean, the stuff that they're doing there is amazing. I don't even think I would have been able to do it when I was a high schooler. So it's really astounding what students can have access to at this current time. And then we try and do outreach to at least get people to come play with our robots. Unfortunately, I couldn't do a demo today with one of the robots we have, but we do take it around. We took it to Brookville. We're taking it to Brockway next week, and Smethport, I believe, in January. So I guess the best way to get into it is stay inquisitive and try and learn as much as you can. If there's school programs, then reach out to that. Or what I did, we didn't have programs at our schools, I just bugged our physics teachers all the time and our computer programming teachers to give me textbooks to take home. So
that's great advice. Really good advice. So Ian, talk to me a little bit about so the company you work for sounds like you get like you contract out services. Is that correct?
Yeah. So essentially what we do is, and there's a lot of other industries that do things like this. You think about the cleaning industry, and you can hire a cleaning company that cleans your house periodically. It's the same type of thing with a managed service provider. Essentially, we get contracts with different businesses and we provide their IT at different levels. Some of them are specifically like they just make calls and we handle things as they come in. Some of them are like the Port Allegheny School District that has a contract where we have 2 of our technicians on site all the time. So it kind of varies in terms of, you know, what the contract is to what level of service and support that they're getting. Which also means that my job can be really interesting, because some days I'm working with a law firm, other days I'm working with a school, sometimes I'm working with a machining company. We work with all kinds of companies, all kinds of softwares. There's never a dull moment, and often I find myself like, all right, what is this software and what exactly are we trying to do with it so that I can make it do that thing, because it's not for, you know, God knows why.
So that's so you make a good point, like about what is this new software? Like how, I mean, I know myself, like I just learned something and then something new comes out and then I get really mad. So like I can't imagine in this industry, like how do you guys keep up, you know, with the technology, guys, because it changes so quickly?
I mean, so for me as a as being self-taught in IT, my core skill set is that I'm very self-taught and very driven. So my thing is that I build most of it at home. You know, Nick was mentioning that he played with robots at home, and that's kind of how he got into it. I actually have a server rack behind me with a bunch of networking equipment and a couple of servers in it. One of them started forever ago. I think it was like a $300 machine that I just made a server. I was like, cool, well, you're going to do server things now, and I'm going to build my network around that. And it's now grown to the point that my home network is more complex than some of the small businesses that we cover at Inshore, just because that's what I needed to do to learn what I wanted to learn. And there's a lot of that I think can be taught in a classroom, but then some of it I found that there was just a lot of value for me being a hands-on kind of guy, that I have this equipment sitting behind me and I get to play with it whenever I want. Like I often tell people that I eat, sleep, and breathe technology. Like literally from the time I wake up, I'm working something at work for involving technology and computers, whether it's a server or a switch or a wireless access point or a firewall or who knows what at the school, or for any number of our clients. And then a lot of nights I come home and I'm either writing a script to automate part of my job because I'm tired of doing it every day. That is a common thing that you will find in IT. And I know, I mean, Nick literally lives that life, right? Like the whole purpose of having robots is because people didn't want to keep doing the same thing all the time. So we automated it. So for me, it's just a lot of, most of my free time goes into like back into the technology industry. And then I also try to make a point of, and this was some advice that a friend of mine who kind of mentored me when I first got into IT gave me, was that he set aside like a specific amount of time a week at work to kind of keep up on what's current, you know, what's the current software. And most companies, like if you work for a managed service provider and you ask for, hey, can I take an hour on Thursday to just like do industry research and kind of try and keep up on what's going on, I have found Inshore has always said yes. My supervisor at Inshore has actually given me permission before to build something at home so that I could test it because I wanted to deploy it at the school. And he's like, no, I think that's a great idea. He's like, and you know, take whatever time you need to do that. So I find that a lot of times, if you're willing to ask and say, hey, I want to do more, I want to learn this thing, a lot of companies will work around that.
Great. And that's great advice. I should maybe do that myself to try to keep up with the technology. So, so all this like learning new things, do you have to like get recertified or, you know, certified in new things, you know, throughout as you move along?
Specifically for me, I'm a bit of an oddball in the industry, and that I don't have any certifications currently. I have a handful of them that I've started, and I'm kind of ADHD about finishing them. So that's a personal weakness. I do heavily encourage people to get certifications. In fact, most companies, including the one that I work for, if I went and finished one of those certifications, took the test, as long as I passed the test, they would write me a check for whatever it took me to go get that certification. So if you can get into an entry-level IT, recertification process is easy. A lot of them do come up. I think most of the Cisco certifications for like networking come up every 3 years. I don't think it used to be CompTIA A plus was a life certificate, but I think it's 5 years now. Is it 3 as well? So it's reduced to 3 years. That was something that I had hoped to have gotten in high school, but they changed the programs and it was no longer offered when I was going to get it. So that was a little bit disappointing for me. But as Nick said, what kids have access to now, you know, the certifications that I would have now if they were offered when I was in school is ungodly long. I would have taken so much advantage of and strongly encouraged. Like, I'm personally a believer of, you know, college is great, and in the IT field, that's not a bad thing, but taking those certifications now when you can is a great way to find out what type of doctor you want to be, to play off of Darryl's example. It wasn't until I got into working for Inshore that I discovered that, like, I was like, yeah, I want to do IT stuff when I started at Inshore. And, you know, 3 years in now, I'm like, no, I want to go hard networking, and then I want to do network automation. And I couldn't have told you that before. I would have been like, yeah, I want to be IT, I guess, because I like computers and stuff. So until you do it, until you do it and have some experience, it's going to be hard to make that decision. So taking the opportunity to get certifications early, I think is a really, really good idea.
Great advice. Great advice. Nick or Darryl, do you guys have any additional comments regarding like certifications, training, that kind of topic?
Nick, do you want to go, or do you want me to dive in?
Yeah, you can lead the way.
All right, sir. So, you know, what do I want to say? After I left ITT, right, I was a college dropout, you know, again, I'll say it. But I left for the right reasons. It wasn't too hard. It wasn't those kind of things. It was, I knew I wasn't getting value from my education. That put me in a state though, where I'm like, I don't need college to do this. You know, I was a consultant forever. Honestly, think of like what Ian's doing, right? That's what I did as a business. I did that for a lot of years for myself, for not just local businesses, but I was all over the state doing repairs for, you know, name it, Dollar General, Walmart, anything. You know, I'd be doing servers and printers and kind of the works for big companies like that, because, you know, it's cheaper for them to have third-party contractors go do stuff than it is to keep people on site for all their different stores. I honestly, I went back to college because my son was kind of a genius, and I didn't want him ever going, well, you didn't finish college, Dad, why do I have to? So that's what threw me back in the college world. The thing that amazed me when I went back and when I started my first certifications, my first one was A+, which I kind of walked through because I'd done it for so many years. But my second cert was my Cisco CCNA. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing networking for 10 years now as a consultant. This is, you know, I know what I'm doing. You open a Cisco cert book and you start learning that certification. You're like, oh my God, look at all the things I didn't know. And that's really what started to drive me to continue down the certification path, was what don't I know? What's the next piece I can learn? And that's kind of what got me into information security then, was this is so cool. This is how to set up a network to move packets everywhere and how I can restrict those packets. Oh, what could I do with that? You know, and how could I protect a company with that? And how could I, you know, adjust traffic flows? You know, my passion started with networking and moved into security just because of those what ifs. You know, when it comes to certifications, mine are kind of across the board. Networking, basic security, you know, I've got the CompTIA Triad A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. You know, we asked about best areas to start for getting into the industry. Pretty much universally is recommended to start those 3 certifications, because it is that foundational knowledge of so many things IT. And then you're like, okay, well, I did help desk and I did sysadmin in my A+, I did Cisco networking. more general, right? You're not going to get into command or anything specific Cisco, but you're going to learn the network stack. You're going to learn how packets move, those kind of things in your network plus. And then security, you're going to say, this is why we're doing it. This is how we're doing it. This is all the things you need to think about. I think after, someone that I just like IT and want to do it, after you do those, whether you take the certs or not, just learning the material, professormesser.com is a free resource to go learn these things. You can go get a feel and be like, okay, this is the cool part to me. This is what I like doing. I'm going to continue to learn that. From there, I've got a chart I monitor. There's like 400 certifications in the industry. To me, they're my Pokemon, right? I got to catch them all. So I keep working towards the next one as I go. Right now, I'm full into pen testing. Like I love penetration testing, ethical hacking, because growing up, when we played video games, we didn't have strategy guides. We didn't have, YouTube videos of people speedrunning it. We didn't have all these things to teach us how to beat the game. We actually had puzzles where it's like, no, if you do this, you die and you start over. So to me, penetration testing these days is the only real puzzle left. It's that thing that nobody can tell you how to do it. A lot of things certifications teach you is this is how something's supposed to work. It's up to you, Ian, I'm sure you would attest to this. A certification is going to tell you this is exactly how it's supposed to work. It's up to Ian to say, this isn't working. Here's what I know it's supposed to do. It's not doing that. Where's it stop doing what it's supposed to? And that's how you troubleshoot. Penetration testing takes it the other step and says, here's what it's not doing. How can I exploit that to make it do something else? Because once you can exploit it to do something else, that's what a hacker's looking for. Can I make this program that's supposed to launch, your calculator on your computer? Can I make that launch a shell script and get reverse, like a remote access to your computer? That's what an attacker's doing. So those are the kind of holes that we look through. And I think certifications teach you again, this is how it's supposed to work. Because when we look at things, you can't know every software package. It's not possible for any one person to say, yep, I know every software package in existence. Every day, like Ian, I'm sure can attest, going to multiple businesses, today might be the first day he looks at Quicken, but he might know QuickBooks. So that's going to teach him how to fix Quicken. And those are the pieces that come down to the user saying, this is what I have to do to fix it. So certifications help drive that, in my opinion.
Nick, do you have anything additional? How about in robotics?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a bunch of certifications you get in robotics, machine vision, stuff like that. We send a lot of our technicians to actual robotics courses from we buy robots from Fanuc, which are the yellow robots. We send them a lot there. On my end, I guess so. My background is electrical engineering, even though I do software engineering as well. And C++ is my background. We're building OEM products that talk to robots on the back end, almost like Internet of Things. And even though I'm good at C++, so these guys are security experts. So C++ has a lot of security issues in terms of pointer bugs. So if you don't manage your memory correctly, you can have security issues. So we're building our software in Java, and I've been out of practice with Java, so I'm doing a certification in Java from Udacity. But there's a bunch of certifications that you can get both formally for your industry and informally. I mean, you have Coursera, you have edX, Udemy. They're all marginally or cheap or just a monthly subscription, or you can just audit courses if you wanted to get certifications. And any of those speak volumes on a resume, just because it shows that you took the time to show interest outside of your day-to-day.
That's a good point too. Very good. Those certifications do look good on resumes. So my last question to just kind of wrap it up, I'll start with you, Nick, is like, do you have, is there anything additional that you want to add that we haven't talked about? And do you have any final advice for students?
Yeah, so I mean, a career path doesn't have to be a linear fashion. I think all of us here had a very you know, unique path to where we got. But if you're passionate about something, chase it. One of the things that's hard, I guess, in engineering and technology, you know, and even making systems is things aren't always right the first time. So it's always accepting failure, learning from it, and keep moving, and not getting discouraged. I don't think I've written any code that worked flawlessly that was new code. You know, debugging is literally part of our process because there's always going to be bugs. It's just accepting that and being able to push forward. So same if you go to college or if you're in a career path, you know, you're going to have roadblocks. It's just learning those people skills or those soft skills on how to handle them and adapt and move forward. So.
Yeah. Ian, how about you?
I think a couple of my my big key focus areas that I didn't even really know until I got into IT. The first being the number of jobs that spent more time talking and this is specifically for like IT support level. Anywhere that you're in a support level, the number of interviews that I've been in that spent more time talking about my history in customer service, the time that I spent at GameStop. The thing that a lot of people don't think about until you give them the example that I will in a minute is like IT support is super customer facing, and it's very important that you know how to play the role of somebody who's able to be helpful to somebody who's frustrated. You know, a lot of the calls that I get are somebody who's very frustrated because their computer's not working, and how I handle that can kind of make or break somebody's day, right? Like if somebody calls me and they're super frustrated because this program that they need to use to run this report that their boss is hounding them about isn't working, like that's now an opportunity for me to potentially really mess somebody's day up if I handle the situation wrong, or an opportunity for me to get to play hero. Which is one of the things that, you know, IT support is, as Darryl said, kind of a thankless job, and IT as a whole kind of is. But if you do it right, you get to play hero a lot. And that's the part of it that I really like. But then you don't really think about that until I never would have thought of it until it was mentioned repeatedly by hiring managers. Like, hey, you know, your customer service background is really great. Like it looks really good on your resume for specifically support, like user facing support roles. A lot of people think of the IT support guy for, say, a school, and they think of some reclusive nerd that hangs out in his office all day. And while there are certainly a lot of days that I really don't have a choice but to hang out in my office all day because I have too much else to do, I find that not being that stereotype has gotten me leaps and bounds ahead in my career, just because people know who I am now. And that's important. On top of that, I also really want to re-solidify the focus on certifications. A college degree is great, but what I'm seeing in the industry, from talking to friends higher in the industry, and at all different levels, my two IT mentors, one of them is a IT manager for a large medical company in Colorado. The other one is a information system, I forget what his exact title is, high level information for eBay. And the two of them have told me that there's a huge shift in the industry right now that's very heavily focused on certifications. College degrees are a great baseline, but in a lot of cases, they're super interested in seeing what certifications you have. And that's something that you can do for at least to get your foot in the door for a fraction the cost of what it would cost you to go to college. You know, college degrees are huge investments, but if you're looking to try something out, go get a couple certifications. It'll probably cost you less than $1,000 to get the entry level skills that you need, rather than totally putting yourself out. And if that works out, great. Maybe go to college and maybe, you know, really flesh out what you're doing in that area. But I've seen a lot of people go and get, like, you know, invest thousands of dollars in college degrees for a very specific granular area of information technology, and then it's not their flavor. And that's, you know, you hate to see it, because you hate to see that, you know, somebody waste that part of their money and then they get discouraged and they think, well, information security is not, or information technology is not for me. But maybe you just shouldn't be working in a SOC, as Darryl said, you know. So those are my two, you know, being good with people, very important. And it is hugely recognized in the IT space. A lot of people in the IT space are that reclusive nerd. So being super personable, it stands out in an interview a lot. And then certifications are, those would be, I would say, probably my two, if I were to give anybody advice, would be as personable as possible, you'll stand out, and get as many certifications as you can, because you'll stand out.
Those are two great pieces of advice. I know that in the education setting, we're constantly telling the students that it's important to put the technology away and, you know, talk to people. And so you bring that up, that's definitely, you know, needed in the industry. And then the certifications, I see a lot of students, you know, grappling with, you know, do I go to college? Don't I go to college? So, you know, letting them know that the certification route is just as valuable, if not maybe more than the college degree. So, so thank you very much for those pieces of evidence. Darryl, how about you?
So I guess a couple things. So like one thing I wanted to ask Ian was, how many times have you been promised cookies for being the hero and then never got your cookies?
Probably, honestly, less than I think about. I would say probably about 50% of the time I've been promised cookies, I've actually gotten them.
Nice. Have you ever been paid in meatballs?
I have not.
Okay. I've been paid in meatballs one time, and I'm not gonna lie, they were the best meatballs I've ever had. So
I'll keep that in mind.
But I guess two things to step on. You know, there are communication definitely helps, right? You know, for me, one of the things I have to do all the time is I have to take things from my highly technical, highly focused security team, and I have to explain them to a board of directors at a financial firm that don't necessarily know what I'm talking about. That's a specific skill set, right? But I can also say on the other side, some of my highly technical people, they can't talk to other people very well. You know, they can go and they can do an awesome job at figuring out the problem, figuring out a vulnerability, figuring out the security settings of a software application, but they can't talk to people. And I think same thing in the networking world. You know, if you're going to go be a NOC admin, you're going to go work in the network closet, you're going to set up Cisco's all day long for a major company, you don't have to talk to people all that much. You know, so there are places in the industry that it works, but it definitely hinders career growth. You know, the more social you can be, the sky becomes the limit. You know, when it comes to college versus certifications, if you had to pick one, I definitely say pick certifications, at least for the footing, because, you know, as Ian mentioned, it's a cheaper path, but you do have those costs. You know, some of those certifications, if you want to buy their training material and pay for the cert, you might be out $2,000. You know, a lot of the material you can source. There's a heck of a lot of free material between YouTube and you know, Professor Messer and, you know, Try Hack Me, Hack the Box. I mean, there's so many free resources pending what you want to learn, that you're normally only paying for the certification. But same thing, I think if you want to become security management, project leads, those kind of things, That's where HR filters, you're going to get stopped at the, you'll never even have a person review your resume until you have a bachelor's degree. There's a lot of companies like that, they have these automated filters that look at resumes for them, because like me, when I'm hiring somebody, if my positions say remote information security, I get thousands of applications. Everybody else in the industry is like, oh, we can't hire. I'm like, I've got remote information security. I can get all the people I need. But it's benefits, so Ian mentioned earlier about companies paying for certifications. Me at the bank, I'll buy all the training material. I'll buy everything for my team to go get certs. I'll pay for my team to go to conferences. We had a guy a month ago, we sent him to Orlando, Florida. He's of course rubbing it in, it was 20 here and 80 there. But he's at a SQL conference, right? But I'm going to do a shameless plug, Amy. Hopefully this is okay. I'm not affiliated with them, but I recommend Western Governors University to anybody looking to college. Western Governors University is the school I went to for both my bachelor's and master's. When I went back looking through colleges, I looked the traditional path, the traditional on-site. I looked at hundreds of schools. I'm a little bit OCD, if you can imagine, being the head of security, of just a little OCD. But I looked at every school and I didn't like what I was seeing. I looked at Phoenix, I looked at DeVry, I've looked at, name the school, I've probably talked to them, even down to Penn State World Campus. I didn't like their programs because most of them were either for profit or so structured in their education that you weren't getting the rounded experience you needed. Where Western Governors differs, they are a competency based. So if you can prove something, like you go in right out of high school and you're like, yeah, I just did calc. You take your math class, if you can go do the final and pass it today, that class is over. You had one day in that class, you're done, because you proved the material. But then most of their technology classes are certifications, and they're paying for the material and paying for the certifications as part of your whatever it's called, the money you pay the college. Yeah, your tuition. Thank you. So I highly recommend it. Again, I'm not an advocate for, or not a ambassador for the school or anything like that. It's just I can't recommend the experience enough. If they ever open a doctorate program, I will be the first to enroll, and I'll work through it because the school's great. They're founded by 19 state governors. That's where the Western Governors comes in, and all of their funding comes from Google, Microsoft, Apple, name it. That's where they get their funding to keep going. Their rates are cheap. It's like $3,500 for 6 months. So
Thank you for sharing that. I haven't heard about them, so I'll have to look into that. All right. Well, I just want to
Amy-
thank, yeah, Bob.
Amy, may I make or ask a question, make a couple comments?
Absolutely.
For the gentleman, thank you very much for participating today. I'm Amy's counterpart up in Potter and McKean County. I work across 10 of the districts up here. First of all, Darryl, I think your comment about technology people and their communication skills, all three of you sort of blow the stereotype out of the water, that you're all excellent communicators, and that's not always a rap that technology people get for that part. We often encourage our students to go out on job shadows to actually see what different occupations are doing. And one of the things that we're getting requested of a lot more up here is to try to get students out in like a co-op or an internship type thing with the company, even before they graduate, much like a side job or whatever, to start to get their feet in the door. Are there opportunities like that? Maybe not as much so in banking, but in the other places, are there places where students could actually get their feet in the water before they even graduate from school to start to hone in where they want to go?
So, I mean, I would say for banking, it's a little hard, especially certain roles, right? So much of what we do touch end users' finances and social security numbers. The head of security tells people, no, don't do that. We do let some positions do it, right? I mean, like our tellers, our frontline, some of our loan ops, we can do it from a more restricted because we have socials blocked out, those kind of things. But normally on the IT and InfoSec side, we tend to say no, just because I'm sure audit would have a fit if we have people knowing what our network rooms look like and those kind of things. But so Ian or Nick, you can probably answer better.
Yeah, in the MSP space, there's a lot of that available. I don't know specifically what age ranges our internships cover. I know that we do a lot of intern work. Unfortunately, Inshore being based in Johnstown, it's not so much up in this area. We did at Port Allegheny, we did have an intern this past summer who was a graduate from the high school. And that worked out really well for us. But I know that Inshore is a company and a lot of other school IT does internship programs. With Inshore, that could be anything from, a lot of times our interns are involved in things like doing mass Chromebook deployments, which seems like less than glorious work. But for example, despite all of my skill set with networking and being basically solely responsible for everything in every network closet at Port Allegheny, from switches to routing to web filters to servers, I'm all of next week, I'm at a school in New Jersey doing a laptop deployment. Sometimes the need of the work kind of supersedes the skill set, right? Just because I could do more than that doesn't mean that that isn't the most important thing that I could be doing for my company next week. And it's a great, getting into that internship, right? With working with somebody like me. Our intern last year, all she did was deploy Chromebooks and help us organize inventory. But she got to work with us, and I did other things while we were doing that, and she was able to ask me a lot of different types of questions. So that internship, sure, maybe the work that you're doing seems potentially boring and monotonous. I know a lot of internships kind of have that vibe, but I would heavily encourage people to focus on that internship gives you access to people who can teach you a lot. And I think that that's probably the core value of that. But a ton of managed service providers do internship programs. Inshore does it very heavily. Definitely something to look into. And I could probably get some more information for that for any students that were, looking to go that route specifically for Inshore. I suspect it would require the ability to travel for us, just because most of our projects do happen further south.
Nick, how about the manufacturing side?
Yeah, Gasbarre does it quite heavily. I know they have a co-op program where high school students can leave for certain periods and come on site and do stuff like that on all various divisions. So Gasbarre is a large company. We have multiple divisions, not just automation, that we get people involved in. Amy, I think you have Courtney Carlson or Courtney, her contact. She'd be the one to contact. She facilitates that program and can get you more information for any interested students.
Okay, thank you. Excellent job today, all three of you.
Thanks, Bob, for the additional questions. Alexis is online also. Alexis, did you have any questions?
No, I didn't, but thank you guys very much. It's very informative.
All right, so that's going to end our session. I do appreciate you guys jumping on today. It's unfortunate that the students weren't able to join us today, but I do know that they're going to be watching the recordings, and I will provide them, if you're okay with your contact information, that they can reach out if they have any additional questions for you guys.
Absolutely.
Yep, for sure.
Well, thank you so much, and I wish you guys a Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Amy, you too.
Yep,
Merry Christmas, Amy. Merry Christmas, everybody. Y'all have a great day.
Yep.